The roses hit the mahogany desk with enough force to scatter petals across the leather blotter, and Naomi's breath caught as Minjun's hand slammed down beside them, his knuckles white against the dark wood. "I asked you a question." His voice was silk wrapped around steel, each word enunciated with the kind of precision that made even his most loyal men flinch. "Who got you those flowers?" Naomi straightened in her chair, meeting his gaze with the same composure that had kept her alive for 3 years in this world of blood and money. Minjun towered over her desk, his charcoal suit immaculate despite the rage simmering beneath his controlled exterior. A thin scar traced his jawline, the only visible reminder of his rise to power, and it seemed to pulse with his barely contained fury. "A colleague," she said evenly, her dark fingers continuing to type on her keyboard as if a 6'2" crime lord wasn't currently invading her personal space. "From accounting. It's Administrative Professionals Day." Administrative Professionals Day. He repeated the words like they tasted bitter. His jaw clenched, and she watched the muscle there jump. "Park Jae-hoon from accounting bought flowers for my secretary." "Your secretary?" Naomi finally stopped typing and looked up at him fully, one perfectly shaped eyebrow arched. "I wasn't aware that being your secretary came with restrictions on receiving professional courtesy gifts." Minjun's dark eyes flashed. He moved around her desk with predatory grace, each step measured and deliberate. When he reached her chair, he spun it around to face him, caging her in with his hands on the armrests. The scent of his cologne, something expensive and woody, enveloped her. "Everything about you has restrictions," he murmured, his face inches from hers. "Your schedule, your security clearance, who you talk to, who sends you flowers." "That wasn't in my employment contract." Naomi's pulse quickened, but she kept her voice steady. 3 years of working for Seoul's most dangerous man had taught her that showing fear was like blood in the water. "Perhaps you'd like to review it. I believe it's filed under K for Kim Naomi in the cabinet you're currently blocking." A muscle twitched in his cheek. For a moment, she wondered if she'd pushed too far. Minjun wasn't known for his patience, and men had died for less than talking back to him. But then something shifted in his expression, a crack in the armor of his rage that let something else seep through, something that looked almost like vulnerability. "You know what I mean," he said quietly, and the change in his tone made her stomach flip. "You know exactly what I mean, Naomi." She did. God help her, she did. Their relationship had always existed in this dangerous gray area, too intimate to be purely professional, too restrained to be anything else. There were the late nights when she'd find him in his office, staring at photographs of enemies and allies alike, and she'd bring him coffee without being asked. The way his hand would linger at the small of her back when he guided her through a room full of dangerous men. The time she'd been grabbed by a rival gang member at a negotiation, and Minjun had put a bullet between the man's eyes before he could finish his threat. But there were also the careful boundaries they maintained. She never asked about the blood on his shirts. He never mentioned the fact that she'd turned down every romantic advance from his men. They existed in a state of deliberate ambiguity, neither willing to cross the line that would change everything. Until now, apparently. "Mr. Yoon," she said, using his formal name like a shield. "You're overreacting to a simple gesture of appreciation for my work." "Am I?" He leaned closer, and she could see gold flecks in his dark irises. "Tell me, Naomi, does Park Jae-hoon know that you reorganized the laundering routes through his department last month? Does he know that the spreadsheets you create for him are the same ones that track our weapons shipments? Does he understand that you're not just some secretary who files papers and answers phones?" "Of course not," she replied. "That's why it's called a cover." "Exactly." His voice dropped lower. "It's a cover, but he looks at you and sees a beautiful woman. He doesn't see the person who's memorized every safe house location in Seoul. He doesn't see the woman who negotiated with the Yakuza when I was in Hong Kong. He sees someone he can give flowers to and maybe take to dinner and maybe." "Stop!" Naomi placed her hand on his chest, feeling his heart hammering beneath the expensive fabric. "You're letting your imagination run wild." "My imagination?" Minjun laughed, but there was no humor in it. He straightened up, running a hand through his perfectly styled black hair, disrupting it for the first time since she'd known him. 3 years, Naomi. 3 years I've watched men look at you. 3 years I've had to pretend I don't notice the way they find excuses to come to your desk. And I've kept my mouth shut because we have rules, don't we? Professional boundaries. He turned away from her, walking to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. Souls sprawled beneath them, glittering in the afternoon sun, a kingdom he ruled from the shadows. His reflection in the glass showed a man at war with himself. But then I walk past your desk and see roses, he continued, his voice tight. Red roses, a dozen of them, and I realize that I'm tired of pretending. Naomi stood slowly, her black pencil skirt restricting her movement. She smoothed down her white blouse, buying herself time to think. This was dangerous territory. Min-jun wasn't just her boss. He was a man who commanded an empire built on violence and fear. Getting involved with him wouldn't just be complicated, it could be fatal. She'd seen what happened to the women in his world. They became targets, leverage, collateral damage. What exactly are you pretending? She asked, moving to stand beside him at the window but maintaining a careful distance. He turned to look at her, and the raw honesty in his expression nearly made her step back. Min-jun never looked vulnerable. He was always controlled, always calculating. But right now, he looked like a man on the edge. That I don't count the minutes until you arrive each morning, he said. That I don't make excuses to call you into my office just to see you. That I don't imagine what it would be like to touch you without apologizing, to kiss you without consequences. He paused, his jaw working. That I don't lie awake at night thinking about you in ways that an employer definitely shouldn't think about his secretary. Naomi's breath hitched. Min-jun. I know, he cut her off. I know all the reasons why this is a bad idea. You're my employee. You're involved in illegal activities because of me. You could be killed because of your association with me. I know that getting involved would put a target on your back bigger than the one that's already there. He stepped closer, his hand reaching up to cup her face with a gentleness that contradicted everything she knew about him. But I'm a selfish man, Naomi. I've built an empire on taking what I want. And what I want is standing in front of me, pretending that she doesn't feel this too. She should step back, should remind him of all those reasons he'd just listed, should grab her purse and resign on the spot, get as far away from Lee Min-jun as possible before this thing between them consumed them both. Instead, she found herself leaning into his touch. This changes everything, she whispered. I know. Your enemies will use me against you. Let them try. His thumb traced her cheekbone. I'll paint Seoul red with their blood. That's not reassuring. I'm not a reassuring man. I've noticed. She closed her eyes, allowing herself this moment of weakness. You're jealous, possessive, violent, and you solve most of your problems with bullets and intimidation. Yes, he said it without shame. You're also loyal to a fault, protective of the people you care about, and you've never once treated me as anything less than your equal despite the fact that I'm your secretary. Also, yes. She opened her eyes to find him staring at her with an intensity that made her knees weak. The flowers were just flowers, Min-jun. Jae-hoon is happily married with 2 children. He gives flowers to everyone in his department for Administrative Professionals Day. Your men could have told you that if you'd asked instead of storming in here like a jealous boyfriend. A slight flush crept up his neck. I may have overreacted. You think? I don't like the thought of anyone else making you smile. Then perhaps you should try making me smile yourself, instead of scowling at innocent accountants. Something shifted in his expression, the tension bleeding away into something warmer, more dangerous. A slow smile curved his lips, and Naomi's heart stuttered. Min-jun rarely smiled, and when he did, it was usually right before he did something reckless. Is that an invitation, Miss Kim? It's a suggestion, Mr. Yoon. I should fire you, he murmured, his other hand coming to rest on her waist. It would be the responsible thing to do before we cross this line. But you won't. No, he agreed. I won't, because I'm not a responsible man, and I've wanted you for far too long to let you go now. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. They both froze, the moment suspended as reality intruded. Min-jun pulled away with visible reluctance, checking the message. His expression hardened instantly, the vulnerable man disappearing behind the mask of the crime lord. "The Choi family is making moves in Gangnam," he said, his voice all business now. "We have a meeting in an hour." Naomi nodded, slipping back into her professional role as easily as breathing. "I'll prepare the briefing files. Are we expecting trouble?" "Always." He straightened his tie, transforming back into the immaculate, dangerous man she'd worked for all these years. But before he turned to leave, he looked back at her, and the heat in his gaze promised that this conversation was far from over. "And Naomi, throw those flowers away." "They're in the trash," she lied smoothly. He smiled slightly, seeing right through her. "You're going to be difficult about this, aren't you?" "About what? Receiving flowers from colleagues, or this new development between us?" "Both." "Absolutely." "Good," he said, surprising her. "I'd be disappointed if you weren't." He started toward the door, then paused. "For the record, when I give you flowers, they won't be roses. Roses are too common for you. You deserve something rare, unique, unforgettable." He left before she could respond, the door closing softly behind him. Naomi sank back into her chair, her hands trembling slightly as she pulled up the files he'd requested. 3 years of careful distance, shattered in a single afternoon by a bouquet of roses and a jealous mafia boss who'd finally stopped pretending. She glanced at the flowers in question, still sitting on her desk despite her lie. They were beautiful, innocent, and they'd inadvertently changed everything. Naomi touched her cheek where Min-jun's hand had been, then forced herself to focus. There was work to do, enemies to strategize against, and an empire to help run. Her personal feelings would have to wait. But as she compiled the briefing on the Choi family, she couldn't stop the small smile that curved her lips. Min-jun was jealous, possessive, and completely inappropriate. And against all reason and self-preservation, she was starting to think she didn't mind. The conference room reeked of expensive cologne and barely concealed hostility. Naomi stood behind Min-jun's chair, tablet in hand, her expression carefully neutral as 8 of Seoul's most dangerous men sized each other up across the polished table. This was her role, the silent observer, the efficient secretary who took notes and provided information when requested. Most of them had stopped noticing her presence months ago, which was exactly how Min-jun wanted it. "The Choi family has been moving product through our territory for 3 weeks now," said Kang Di-sung, Min-jun's second-in-command. He was a bear of a man with a shaved head and knuckles that looked like they'd broken more noses than Naomi could count. "They're getting bold." "Bold or stupid?" asked another lieutenant, Park Sung-ho. "Choi T1 knows what happened to the last crew that tried to cut into our distribution." Min-jun hadn't spoken yet. He sat at the head of the table, fingers steepled beneath his chin, listening with the kind of intense focus that made people uncomfortable. Naomi had learned to read his moods in the subtle shifts of his posture. Right now, the tension in his shoulders told her he was calculating, planning, waiting for the right moment to strike. "Naomi," he said without turning around, "show them the surveillance footage from last night." She stepped forward, connecting her tablet to the room's display system. The screen flickered to life, showing grainy footage from a warehouse in Gangnam. Figures moved in the darkness, loading boxes into unmarked vans. "This was taken at 2:47 a.m., she explained, her voice crisp and professional. "The warehouse is registered to one of our shell companies, but as you can see, that didn't stop them. They moved approximately 200 kilograms of methamphetamine, street value of about 5 billion won. A murmur ran through the room. Min-jun's men exchanged glances, their anger palpable. This wasn't just business anymore, it was disrespect. A direct challenge to Min-jun's authority. "They're testing us," Di-sung growled, "seeing if we've gone soft." "Have we?" Min-jun's voice was quiet, but it silenced the room instantly. He finally looked up, his gaze sweeping across his lieutenants. "Have I given anyone reason to think we've gone soft?" "No, sir," came the unanimous response. Then perhaps Choi Tae-won has forgotten why I'm sitting in this chair and his former allies aren't. Min-jun's smile was cold. Naomi, pull up the financial records. She swiped through screens, bringing up a complex web of transactions and offshore accounts. The Choi family's cash flow has increased by 40% in the last quarter, she reported. They've been making significant investments in real estate and legitimate businesses. Someone's backing them. Who? Sung-ho asked. That's what we need to find out, Min-jun said, standing. He moved to the window, hands clasped behind his back. Money like that doesn't appear from nowhere. Either they've found a new supplier with better prices, or they're being funded by someone who wants to see us weakened. Naomi pulled up another file. I've been tracking their known associates. 3 weeks ago, Choi had a meeting with a Japanese businessman named Taekta Hiroshi at the Shilla Hotel. Taekta has connections to the Yamagata-gumi. The room went cold. The Yamagata-gumi was one of Japan's largest Yakuza organizations. If they were making moves in Seoul, it meant something bigger than a simple territory dispute. Min-jun turned back to his men, and Naomi saw the predator surface in his eyes. Di-sung, I want eyes on every one of Choi's operations. Sung-ho, reach out to our contacts in Tokyo. Find out what Taekta's interest is in Seoul. And someone find out who's handling Choi's security these days. I want to know how many men he has and where they're positioned. What about the warehouse? Di-sung asked. We take it back, Min-jun said simply. Tonight, I want Choi to understand that touching what's mine comes with consequences. As his lieutenants filed out to execute his orders, Naomi began collecting the files and disconnecting her tablet. She felt Min-jun's presence behind her before he spoke. Stay. She straightened, turning to face him. They were alone now, the door closed, and the atmosphere shifted immediately. The crime lord facade cracked slightly, revealing glimpses of the man who'd touched her face with such tenderness just hours ago. You're planning something dangerous, she said. It wasn't a question. I'm always planning something dangerous. That's my job. You're going to the warehouse yourself tonight, she crossed her arms. Don't bother denying it, I can tell. He moved closer, a slight smile playing at his lips. 3 years and you've learned to read me that well. Someone has to keep you from getting yourself killed. Is that concern I hear, Miss Kim? He reached out, tucking a strand of her hair behind her ear. The gesture was intimate, possessive, everything that their relationship wasn't supposed to be. I thought we were maintaining professional boundaries. You're the one who demolished those boundaries, with your jealous tantrum over flowers. Tantrum, his eyebrow arched. I don't have tantrums. You threw roses across my desk like a petulant child. I placed them down with emphasis. You slammed them. Semantics. But he was smiling now, really smiling, and Naomi felt her resolve weakening. How was this the same man who just ordered a retaliatory strike that would likely end in bloodshed? Min-jun, she said seriously, placing her hand on his chest. If you're going to do this, whatever this is between us, you need to understand something. I can't just sit in my office wondering if you're going to come back in a body bag. I've spent 3 years pretending I don't care what happens to you. I can't do that anymore. His expression softened. He covered her hand with his, pressing it firmly against his heart. You think I haven't noticed you tracking my location whenever I go into the field, or the way you have medical supplies in your desk drawer, or how you always make sure my bulletproof vest is up to date. She blinked, surprised. You knew. Naomi, I know everything that happens in this building, including the fact that you've been taking self-defense classes for the past year and have a licensed firearm in your apartment. He leaned down, his forehead nearly touching hers. You think I'd let you work for me without knowing you could protect yourself? I thought I was being discreet. You are to everyone else. His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. But I pay attention to you in ways I don't pay attention to anyone else. It's become a bit of a problem, actually. My men think I'm distracted. Are you? Constantly. He said it like a confession. Especially today, all I can think about is kissing you and whether you taste as good as I've imagined. Heat flooded through her. We're in your conference room. Your men are right outside. I'm aware of our location. This is highly inappropriate. Also aware, but he didn't move away. Instead, his free hand found her waist, pulling her closer. Tell me to stop, and I will. Tell me you don't want this, and we'll go back to pretending. I'll be your boss, you'll be my secretary, and we'll never speak of this again. It was an out, a chance to retreat back to safety, to the careful distance they'd maintained for 3 years. Naomi knew she should take it. Getting involved with Min Jun was dangerous on every level, professionally, personally, physically. His world was violence and death. Women who got close to him didn't fare well. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw something that made her breath catch. Vulnerability, hope, the expression of a man who'd never allowed himself to want something he couldn't take by force, now offering her a choice. What if I say yes, she whispered. What happens then? Then everything changes. His voice was rough. You become mine and I become yours, and I protect what's mine with everything I have. I don't need protection. I need partnership. Something flickered in his eyes, respect, maybe, or admiration. Then that's what you'll get, equal partnership in everything, including tonight's operation. He hesitated, and she saw the internal struggle, the urge to protect her warring with his recognition of her capabilities. You want to come to the warehouse, he said slowly. I have just as much stake in this as you do. The Choi family threatened our operations. That includes me. You could be hurt. So could you. She met his gaze steadily. I've been behind the scenes for 3 years, Min Jun. I've planned operations, tracked enemies, managed your entire empire from my desk. But I've never been in the field. Maybe it's time that changed. He studied her for a long moment, then released a breath. You'll stay in the car with D-Sung. You observe and coordinate communications. You don't engage unless absolutely necessary. And you wear a vest. Agreed. And Naomi, his grip on her waist tightened. After tonight, when we come back safe, we're finishing this conversation. No more interruptions, no more pretending. I'm done being patient. Her pulse quickened. Is that a threat, Mr. Yoon? It's a promise, Miss Kim. Before she could respond, he closed the distance between them and kissed her. It wasn't tentative or gentle. It was claiming, possessive, 3 years of restraint finally breaking. Naomi's mind went blank as his mouth moved against hers, his hand sliding up to cradle the back of her head. She gripped his suit jacket, pulling him closer, returning the kiss with equal fervor. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Min Jun rested his forehead against hers. I've wanted to do that since the day you walked into my office for your interview. You were very intimidating during that interview. I was trying not to stare at you like an idiot. He smiled against her lips. I failed. I noticed. She pulled back slightly, trying to regain some composure. We should prepare for tonight. Always so practical. One of us has to be. But she couldn't stop herself from touching his face, tracing that scar along his jaw. Promise me you'll be careful. I promise. He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. And you promise me the same. Deal. They separated reluctantly, both straightening their clothes and reassembling their professional masks. But something fundamental had shifted. As they left the conference room together, Naomi felt the weight of eyes tracking them. D-Sung stood near the elevator, his expression knowing. About time, boss, he said with a slight smirk. Min Jun shot him a warning look. Focus on the operation, D-Sung. Yes, sir, but the smirk remained. Miss Kim, welcome to the field. She nodded, feeling the reality of her decisions settling over her. Tonight, she would step out of the shadows and into Min Jun's world completely. There would be no going back. Min Jun's hand found the small of her back as they walked to the elevator, a public claim that made several nearby men's eyes widen. He didn't care. Let them see. Let them know. As the elevator doors closed, sealing them in privacy for a moment, he looked at her with an intensity that made her shiver. No regrets, he asked quietly. Naomi thought about the flowers on her desk, the jealous mafia boss, and the dangerous path she was choosing. Then she looked at the man beside her, complicated, violent, and utterly devoted. No regrets, she confirmed. His smile was worth every risk. The bulletproof vest felt heavier than Naomi had expected. She adjusted the straps for the third time, trying to find a comfortable position as she sat in the back of Minjun's armored SUV. The vehicle smelled of leather and gun oil, and the weight of the Glock 19 holstered at her side felt both foreign and reassuring. "Stop fidgeting," Disung said from the driver's seat, watching her in the rearview mirror. "The vest fits fine, you're just nervous." "I'm not nervous," she lied, smoothing down the black tactical jacket she wore over the vest. Her usual office attire had been replaced with dark jeans and boots, clothes meant for movement, not boardrooms. "First time in the field always makes people nervous," he continued, ignoring her denial. "Even the boss was nervous his first time." "I doubt that very much." "It's true," Disung's eyes crinkled with amusement. "He threw up in an alley after his first kill. His father beat him for showing weakness, but Minjun still threw up." Naomi processed this information quietly. Minjun rarely spoke about his father, the previous boss of the organization. She knew the man had been brutal, had shaped Minjun into the leader he was today through methods that probably qualified as torture. The empire had softened considerably under Minjun's rule, though outsiders would never believe it. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. Disung shrugged, his massive shoulders moving beneath his tactical gear. "Because you're not just his secretary anymore. If you're going to stand beside him, you need to understand where he came from. What made him?" He paused, his expression growing serious. "And because I've worked for him for 15 years, and I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. That makes you family, and family looks out for each other." Before she could respond, the radio crackled to life. Minjun's voice came through, calm and controlled. "All units in position. Naomi, status report." She grabbed the radio, grateful for something to focus on besides the anxiety coiling in her stomach. "Surveillance shows 12 hostiles inside the warehouse, 3 more patrolling the perimeter. 2 vehicles parked at the north entrance, black sedans, probably their exit strategy. Heat signatures indicate the product is still inside, southwest corner, 2nd floor." "Good." There was approval in his tone, and she felt an absurd flush of pride. "Disung, keep your position. Naomi, coordinates from there. Team 1, you're with me through the main entrance. Team 2, cover the north exit. I don't want anyone leaving with our property." A chorus of confirmations came through the radio. Naomi pulled up the warehouse schematics on her tablet, tracking the heat signatures as Minjun's teams moved into position. She'd planned operations like this dozens of times from her desk, but being in the field, watching it unfold in real time, was completely different. "Team 1 entering now," Minjun's voice reported. Naomi held her breath as she watched the dots representing his team breach the main entrance. For a moment, everything was silent. Then the radio exploded with noise, shouting, gunfire, the chaos of combat compressed into crackling audio. "3 down, northeast corner," someone reported. "They're running for the vehicles," another voice shouted. "Team 2, intercept," Minjun ordered, his voice cutting through the chaos with absolute authority. Even in the middle of a firefight, he sounded calm. Naomi switched between camera feeds, her fingers flying across the tablet. "Minjun, you have 4 hostiles coming from the 2nd floor, using the west stairwell. They're trying to flank you." "Copy that." A pause, then the sound of gunfire. "Handled. Team 1, secure the product. I want eyes on every box." She watched the operation unfold with clinical precision. Minjun's men moved like a well-oiled machine, each one knowing their role, trusting their leader completely. Within 7 minutes, the warehouse was secure. "Naomi, send in the cleanup crew," Minjun instructed. "And call Dr. Yang. We have 2 wounded non-critical." "On it." She made the calls quickly, coordinating the next phase of the operation. This part she knew well, the logistics, the aftermath, making sure everything disappeared as if it never happened. 20 minutes later, Minjun emerged from the warehouse, and Naomi's chest tightened at the sight of him. There was blood on his white shirt. She couldn't tell if it was his or someone else's. His hair was disheveled, and he'd lost his suit jacket somewhere in the chaos. But he was walking under his own power, alert and uninjured. He strode directly to their SUV, yanking open her door. His eyes scanned her from head to toe, checking for injuries even though she'd never left the vehicle. "I'm fine," she said before he could ask. "I need to see for myself." His hands ran over her arms, her shoulders, satisfying himself that she was whole and safe. "You did well. The warning about the flanking maneuver saved lives." "Just doing my job." "No," he cupped her face, apparently unconcerned that his men were watching. "You were magnificent. Calm, efficient, perfect. My father always said the best weapon was information, and you just proved him right." Dasung cleared his throat from the front seat. "Boss, we should move. Police response time in this area is about 12 minutes, and we're at minute 8. Minjun nodded, sliding into the back seat beside Naomi. The convoy of vehicles pulled away from the warehouse, leaving behind a cleanup crew that would ensure no evidence remained by morning. As they drove through Seoul's night streets, Minjun kept his hand on Naomi's knee, a constant point of contact, as if he needed to reassure himself she was there. She covered his hand with hers, feeling the dried blood on his knuckles. "Whose blood?" she asked quietly. "Cha's second in command. He decided to be brave." Minjun's voice was flat, emotionless. This was the part of him that frightened most people, the cold efficiency with which he dealt out death. "He won't be a problem anymore." And Cha himself wasn't there. Smart man, he knew we'd come. Minjun's jaw clenched. "But we recovered everything he stole, plus his entire operations records. Apparently he kept very detailed ledgers. Naomi, you're going to want to see these." He pulled out a blood-stained folder, opening it to reveal financial documents. Even in the dim interior light of the SUV, Naomi could see the implications. Her mind, trained for patterns and analysis, immediately started piecing together the puzzle. "These payments," she said, pointing to a series of wire transfers. "They're not just from Tukta. Look at the routing numbers. These are coming from the Colombians." Minjun leaned closer, studying the documents. "The Madullan Group." "No, smaller. The Kali connections we've been monitoring." She flipped through more pages, her excitement growing despite the circumstances. "Minjun, I think Cha is trying to establish a direct pipeline from South America through Japan to Seoul. If he succeeds, he could undercut our prices by 30%. Not if he's dead, he can't." Naomi looked up at him sharply. "You're going to kill him." "Did you think I'd let him walk away after stealing from us?" His voice was reasonable, as if they were discussing business strategy rather than murder. "He challenged my authority. That can't go unanswered." "I understand that, but if you kill him now, you'll start a war with the Yakuza and the Colombians. They've invested in him." She tapped the documents. "Look at these amounts. We're talking about hundreds of millions of won. They won't write that off because one partner got executed." "Then what do you suggest?" There was no condescension in his question. He was genuinely asking for her strategic input. "We take everything from him first," she said, her mind racing through possibilities. "His territory, his connections, his credibility. We leak these documents to his backers, show them he's been skimming off the top. Look here, these discrepancies in the shipment weights versus reported amounts. He's been stealing from them too." Minjun's eyes lit up with understanding. "Let them kill him for us. Or, at minimum, withdraw their support. Then he's just another small-time operator we can absorb or eliminate at our leisure." She met his gaze. "No war, minimal risk, maximum gain." He stared at her for a long moment, and she saw something shift in his expression. It was the look he got when he was refolioting someone, seeing them in a new light. "You're brilliant," he said finally. "Absolutely brilliant. I've been so focused on immediate retaliation that I missed the larger strategy." "That's why you hired me." "I hired you because you were qualified and terrifying in your interview," he corrected. "I kept you because you made me think differently, and I'm falling for you because you see the board while everyone else is focused on the pieces." The casual way he said it, falling for you, made her heart skip. This was Lee Min-jun, the man who never admitted vulnerability, essentially confessing feelings in the back of an SUV with his second-in-command right there. Dusung made a choking sound from the front seat. "Something to say?" Minjun asked mildly. "No, sir. Just clearing my throat, sir." "Good, because Naomi and I are going to my penthouse to review these documents in detail. You'll take the rest of the team back to the office and begin implementing her strategy. I want Chuz backers seeing these leaked documents by morning." "Understood," but there was a knowing smirk in Dusung's voice. Naomi felt heat rise in her cheeks. It was obvious that reviewing documents wasn't the only thing on Minjun's agenda. After the adrenaline of the operation, the kiss in the conference room, and the charged tension that had been building between them all day, going to his penthouse alone felt like crossing the Rubicon. "We really should review the documents," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. "We will," Minjun's thumb traced circles on her knee. "Eventually." The SUV pulled up to a luxury high-rise in Gangnam, one of Seoul's most exclusive addresses. Of course Minjun lived here. The man didn't do anything by halves. As they rode the elevator to the penthouse, 42 floors of anticipation, Naomi felt her professional composure cracking. Minjun stood close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him, could smell the mixture of his cologne and cordite from the firefight. "Nervous?" he asked, echoing Dusung's earlier question. "Should I be?" "That depends." The elevator doors opened directly into his penthouse, a sprawling space of floor-to-ceiling windows, modern furniture, and expensive art. "Are you afraid of me, Naomi?" She stepped into the penthouse, taking in the space that was somehow both impersonal and intimately revealing. Everything was high-end but sparse, as if Minjun didn't quite know what to do with personal space. The only warmth came from a shelf of books, actual physical books, an extravagance in the digital age. "No," she answered honestly, turning to face him. "I'm not afraid of you. I'm afraid of what happens if this doesn't work. I'm afraid of losing what we have, the partnership, the trust, the understanding. I'm afraid that once we cross this line, we can't go back." He moved toward her slowly, setting the bloody folder on a side table. "You're right, we can't go back. But Naomi, we also can't keep going forward with this thing between us unresolved. It's affecting my judgment. Today proved that." "The jealousy over the flowers." "The jealousy over everything," he corrected. "I almost started a war tonight because I was too angry thinking about someone else making you smile. That's not strategic. That's not rational. That's me being compromised by feelings I can no longer control." "And you think this will help?" She gestured between them. "Being together will make you less compromised." "No." He stopped in front of her, close enough to touch but not touching. "It will make me more compromised, more vulnerable, more dangerous to my enemies because they'll know exactly what leverage to use against me." His hand came up to cup her cheek. "But it will also make me happier than I've been in years, and I'm tired of denying myself happiness because it's strategically unsound." Naomi leaned into his touch, her decision made. She'd been lying to herself for 3 years, pretending this was just a job, that Minjun was just her boss. But from the moment she'd walked into his office for that interview and seen the intelligence and loneliness in his eyes, she'd been caught. "I'm compromised too," she admitted. "I check your location obsessively. I vet everyone who gets close to you. I've had nightmares about you being killed and me not being there to stop it." She placed her hand over his heart, feeling it beat strong and steady. "So if we're going to be compromised, let's at least be compromised together." His smile was beautiful and rare and meant only for her. "Together," he agreed. Then he kissed her again, and this time there was no conference room, no interruptions, no reasons to stop. This time, there was just the two of them, finally allowing themselves to have what they'd wanted for so long. Outside the windows, Seoul glittered with millions of lights, a city of secrets and power, where two people from completely different worlds had somehow found each other in the darkness. And for the first time in 3 years, Naomi felt like she was exactly where she belonged. Sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting golden stripes across Minjun's bedroom. Naomi woke slowly, her body draped across silk sheets that probably cost more than her monthly salary. For a disorienting moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then she felt the warm weight of Min-jun's arm around her waist, his chest pressed against her back, and memory flooded in, the warehouse operation, the penthouse, the way he'd touched her like she was something precious and dangerous all at once. "You're thinking too loud," Min-jun murmured against her shoulder, his voice rough with sleep. "I can hear your brain working from here. Someone needs to think about the consequences of what we did." We reviewed the Choi documents very thoroughly. His lips traced her spine. Multiple times, very detailed analysis. "We reviewed them once, for 20 minutes, before you got distracted." "You got me distracted." His hand splayed possessively across her stomach. "Talking about financial projections and that voice of yours, looking at me with those eyes. What was I supposed to do?" "Exercise self-control." "I'm a crime lord, not a saint." He pulled her closer, burying his face in her hair. "Besides, I distinctly remember you being equally enthusiastic about abandoning the paperwork." Heat crept up her neck because he was right. Whatever control she'd maintained for 3 years had shattered completely last night. She'd been as desperate as he was, as hungry for connection, as tired of pretending. "We need to talk about how this changes things at work," she said, trying to inject some practicality into the morning after. "Your men already suspect. By now, the entire organization probably knows you brought me to your penthouse." "Good, let them know." He rolled her over to face him, and she was struck again by how different he looked in private. His hair was mussed, his face relaxed, no trace of the cold crime lord who'd orchestrated last night's operation. This was just Min-jun, the man, not the myth. "I'm done hiding what you mean to me. Your enemies will use me against you." "They'll try." His expression hardened slightly. "And they'll learn why that's a fatal mistake. Anyone who touches you answers to me personally." "That's exactly what I'm talking about. You can't execute everyone who looks at me wrong." "Watch me." "Min-jun." She pressed her palm against his cheek, forcing him to focus. "I'm serious. We need ground rules, boundaries. I won't be the reason you start unnecessary wars or make reckless decisions." He was quiet for a moment, studying her face with that unnerving intensity. "You really think I'd let my feelings for you compromise the organization?" "I think you threw roses across my desk because an accountant gave me flowers. I think you almost started a war last night because you were angry. I think when it comes to me, you're not as controlled as you believe." "You're right," he said it simply, without defensiveness. "When it comes to you, I'm not controlled at all. You terrify me in ways my enemies never could, because losing territory or money or even men, those are things I can recover from, but losing you—" His thumb traced her lower lip. "That would break something in me I don't think could be repaired." Her breath caught. "You can't say things like that." "Why not? It's true." "Because it gives me too much power over you." "You already have that power. Have had it since the day you reorganized my entire filing system and told me my security protocols were adequate but unimaginative." He smiled at the memory. "You looked at my empire and saw ways to improve it. You looked at me and saw potential instead of just danger. No one had ever done that before." Naomi felt her resolve weakening. This was the problem with Min-jun. He could be brutal and tender in the same breath, could discuss murder over breakfast, and then look at her like she was his entire world. "Ground rules," she insisted. "First, at work I'm still your secretary. We maintain professionalism in front of others unless absolutely necessary." "Agreed, with one caveat. If anyone disrespects you, professionalism goes out the window." "Min-jun." "Non-negotiable. You're under my protection now, even more than before. Everyone needs to understand that." She sighed, knowing this was the best she'd get. "Second, you don't make major decisions when you're emotional about me. If something happens that makes you angry on my behalf, you wait 24 hours before acting." His jaw clenched. What if 24 hours is too long? What if you're in danger? "Then obviously you act. I'm talking about situations like the flowers, cooling off periods for non-emergencies." He considered this, clearly unhappy but seeing the logic. 12 hours, and only for non-threats to your physical safety. Fine, third. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, interrupting her. She reached for it, frowning at the screen. It's an alert from the surveillance system at the office. Minjun was instantly alert, the relaxed lover disappearing behind the strategist. What kind of alert? Someone accessed the secure server room at 6:47 a.m. She pulled up the security feed on her phone, her stomach sinking. Minjun, that's your private server, the one with all the... Everything. His voice went cold. Financial records, operation details, personnel files, everything that could destroy us. He was already out of bed, pulling on clothes with efficient speed. Who has access to that room? You, me, and Di-sung, that's it. She watched the grainy footage, trying to identify the figure. They wore a maintenance uniform and kept their head down, clearly aware of camera positions. This was planned. They knew exactly where to go. Minjun was on his phone, barking orders. Di-sung, get to the office now. Someone breached the secure server. Yes, now. He listened for a moment, his expression darkening. He's where? When did he leave? A pause. Find him. I want Sung-ho found within the hour. He ended the call, and Naomi saw the cold fury settling over him like armor. This was the Minjun his enemies feared, utterly controlled, completely merciless. Sung-ho, she asked, pulling on her clothes from last night. He's been with you for years. 8 years. Minjun's voice was flat. Apparently not long enough to earn loyalty. Di-sung says he left the office at 6:45 a.m., claiming a family emergency, 2 minutes before the breach. Could be coincidence. You don't believe that any more than I do. He checked his gun, sliding it into his shoulder holster. He had the access codes, he knew the security protocols, and 3 months ago he was passed over for promotion to lieutenant. Naomi's mind raced through the implications. If he copied the server, whoever he's working for now has everything. Client lists, supply chains, financial accounts, blackmail material. The names and locations of every person under our protection, Minjun finished grimly. Families of our men, informants, allies. If that information goes public, hundreds of people become targets. They made it to his building's private garage in record time. Minjun's driver was already waiting, the armored SUV idling. As they sped through Seoul's morning traffic, Naomi pulled up the server logs on her tablet. He accessed files for 43 seconds. She reported, "That's enough time to initiate a full copy to an external drive. Minjun, the encryption should have prevented." She stopped, her blood running cold. Someone disabled the encryption protocol at 6:30 a.m., 15 minutes before the breach. Remote access. No, this was done from inside the system using, she felt sick, using my credentials. Minjun's head snapped toward her. What? Someone used my login, my password, my security clearance. She scrolled through the logs frantically. But I was here. I was with you. I couldn't have. I know. His hand found hers, squeezing hard. Obviously you didn't do this, but someone had your credentials. How? I don't know, I'm careful. I change passwords monthly. I never write them down. She stopped, a memory surfacing. 3 weeks ago, I left my laptop at my desk during lunch. When I came back, it had restarted. I thought it was just a system update. But it was someone installing monitoring software. Minjun's voice was deadly quiet. Sung-ho had plenty of opportunities to access your laptop. He's visited your desk dozens of times in the past months. This was planned weeks in advance, Naomi said slowly, the full scope of the betrayal becoming clear. The Cha situation, the breach, it's all connected, isn't it? Someone's making a coordinated move against us. And they've been preparing from inside our own organization. Minjun pulled out his phone again. I want a full audit of everyone who's had access to Naomi's office or laptop in the past month, and get our tech team sweeping all her devices for malware immediately. They arrived at the office to find it in controlled chaos. Da-sung met them at the elevator, his expression grim. We found Sung-ho's apartment. He's gone, cleaned out completely like he'd been planning it for weeks, but he left this. He handed Minjun a burner phone with a single message on the screen. You should have promoted me when you had the chance. Now I'm worth more to your enemies than I ever was to you. Minjun's hand clenched around the phone, so hard Naomi heard the plastic crack. Do we know who he's working for? Based on the encrypted messages we recovered from his computer, looks like the Yakuza, specifically Tukta's people. Dasung glanced at Naomi. Miss Kum, we need you to tell us everything that was on that server, so we know exactly what intelligence they have. The next 3 hours were a blur of damage control. Naomi worked with the tech team to catalog every file that had been accessed, while Minjun coordinated with his lieutenants to secure their most vulnerable people and assets. The scope of the breach was devastating, not just strategic information, but personal details that could be used for blackmail, kidnapping, or worse. We need to move 23 families to safe houses, Naomi reported, her voice hoarse from talking. Relocate 4 informants, close down 6 operations that are now compromised, and assume all our financial accounts are known, so we need to initiate the contingency transfers. Already in progress, Minjun assured her. He looked exhausted, the night with her and the morning's crisis taking their toll. Dasung is handling the relocations. What about the client list? That's the worst part. She pulled up a file. We have 17 clients who use our services specifically because of anonymity. Politicians, business leaders, people who can't afford to have their names connected to organized crime. If this information leaks. It won't, Minjun said with absolute certainty. Because we're going to find Sung-ho and recover that drive before he can deliver it. And then I'm going to make an example of him that will remind everyone why betraying me is a death sentence. One of the tech analysts cleared his throat nervously. Sir, we've been tracking Sung-ho's movements. He's heading for Uncheon Airport. Flight to Tokyo leaves in 3 hours. Minjun's smile was predatory. Then we have 3 hours to catch him. He looked at Naomi. I need you here coordinating the damage control. Dasung and I will handle Sung-ho. No, the word came out before she could think better of it. I'm coming with you. Naomi. He used my credentials. He violated my security. This breach happened because someone got to me first. Her voice was steel. I'm not sitting behind a desk while you clean up my mess. It's not your mess. It's our mess. We're partners, remember? Equal in everything. She met his gaze steadily. You promised me that yesterday. Minjun looked like he wanted to argue, but Dasung interrupted. Boss, if I may, Miss Kum has a point. Sung-ho might be more willing to talk if she's there. He doesn't see her as a physical threat, which could work to our advantage. It was clearly killing Minjun to agree, but he nodded curtly. You stay behind me at all times. You don't engage unless I explicitly tell you to, and you wear a vest. Obviously. 20 minutes later, they were racing toward Uncheon Airport, multiple vehicles full of Minjun's men forming a convoy. Naomi sat beside Minjun, checking and rechecking her gun, a nervous habit she'd developed in the past 24 hours of fieldwork. When this is over, Minjun said quietly, we're implementing new security protocols, biometric authentication for all sensitive areas, daily sweeps for surveillance equipment, limited access to your office. When this is over, Naomi countered, you're going to stop blaming yourself for not seeing this coming. Betrayal happens, even to the most careful leaders. I should have seen it, should have noticed Sung-ho's resentment. He hid it well, that's what made him dangerous. She placed her hand over his. But we'll handle it together, like we handle everything else. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. Last night you asked about ground rules. Here's mine. No matter what happens, we protect each other first. The organization second, always. Minjun, you can't mean that. I absolutely mean it. I've spent 15 years building this empire, but I'd burn it all down before I'd let something happen to you. His eyes met hers with absolute conviction. You need to understand that, need to accept it, because it's not changing. Before she could respond, Dasung's voice came through the radio. We've got eyes on Sung-ho, Terminal 2 near the JAL gates. He's alone, carrying a briefcase. Minjun's expression went cold. Secure the exits. I want him contained. No one gets in or out of that terminal until we have him." As they pulled up to the airport, Naomi felt the familiar anxiety return, but this time it was mixed with something else. Determination. Sung-ho had used her to betray the man she loved, had put countless innocent people at risk. It was time to get their information back. And make sure Park Sung-ho understood exactly what happened to people who crossed Lee Min-jun. Uncheon Airport was a maze of glass and steel, thousands of travelers moving through its corridors, oblivious to the predator in their midst. Naomi followed Min-jun through the terminal, acutely aware of the gun at her hip and the vest beneath her jacket. They moved with purpose but not urgency, just another business couple catching a flight. Behind them, scattered throughout the crowd, were 8 of Min-jun's best men, all connected by discreet earpieces. "Target is at gate 47, Da-sung's voice crackled through the communication device. "He's seated, briefcase between his feet, looks nervous." "He should be," Min-jun muttered. His hand rested on Naomi's lower back, that possessive touch she was growing accustomed to. "Naomi, you approach from the left. Act like you're surprised to see him. Keep him talking while we get into position." "And if he runs?" "He won't make it 10 feet. Min-jun's voice was ice. "But I'd prefer to do this quietly. Airport security doesn't need to be involved." Naomi nodded, separating from Min-jun and making her way toward gate 47. Her heart hammered as she spotted Sung-ho, a man she'd worked with for 3 years, had brought coffee to during late nights, had trusted. He looked older than she remembered, stress evident in the lines around his eyes. She took a breath and walked directly toward him, letting recognition cross her face. "Sung-ho, what are you doing here?" He jerked upright, terror flashing across his features. His hand moved toward the briefcase, but Naomi sat down beside him quickly, blocking the movement with her body. "I'm surprised to see you," she continued, her voice friendly but firm. "Min-jun said you had a family emergency. Is everything all right?" Yes, family issue in Tokyo." His eyes darted around, looking for escape routes. "What are you doing here?" "Business trip, you know how it is." She angled her body slightly. And Sung-ho's gaze caught on the telltale bulge of her shoulder holster. His face went pale. "Though I have to say, it's funny running into you, especially since someone breached our secure server this morning, using my credentials." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you?" Naomi's voice hardened. "Because the tech team found your fingerprints all over my laptop. They found the monitoring software you installed 3 weeks ago. They found everything, Sung-ho." He stood abruptly, grabbing the briefcase. "I need to board my flight." "Your flight doesn't leave for 2 hours." Min-jun's voice came from behind him, and Sung-ho froze. "Plenty of time for us to have a conversation." Sung-ho turned slowly to find himself surrounded. Min-jun stood directly behind him, flanked by D-sung and 3 other men. To the casual observer, they looked like business associates having a discussion, but Sung-ho knew better. He was trapped. "Boss, I can explain." "Then explain." Min-jun's voice was deceptively calm. "Explain why you betrayed me. Explain why you put hundreds of innocent people at risk. Explain why I shouldn't kill you right here." "You passed me over," Sung-ho said, desperation making him bold. 8 years I've worked for you, 8 years of loyalty, of doing everything you asked. And when a lieutenant position opened up, you gave it to someone who'd been with us half as long." "Because he was better qualified," Min-jun replied. "Leadership isn't about tenure, Sung-ho. It's about capability. And apparently I was right to question yours, since you responded to disappointment by committing treason. The Yakuza offered me more than just a promotion. They offered me respect, a place at the table." Sung-ho clutched the briefcase tighter. "Things you never gave me." "I gave you employment, protection, a generous salary." Min-jun stepped closer, and even Naomi felt the menace radiating from him. "What I didn't give you was blind trust, and now I know why." "The drive," Naomi interjected, keeping her voice low. "Give us the drive, Sung-ho. You haven't delivered it yet. There's still time to minimize the damage." "Why would I do that? The moment I give it to you, I'm dead." You're dead either way, Minjun said flatly. The only question is how much you suffer first, and whether your family suffers with you. You wouldn't. Sung-ho's eyes widened with genuine fear. My family had nothing to do with this. Neither did the 23 families you put at risk with your betrayal. Minjun's voice was cold. Neither did Naomi when you used her credentials. But that didn't stop you, did it? So tell me why I should show mercy to your family when you showed none to ours. Naomi watched the calculation happen behind Sung-ho's eyes. He was weighing his options, trying to find a way out that didn't end with his death. She almost felt sorry for him, almost. The Yakuza won't let this go, Sung-ho said finally. Even if you kill me, they'll keep coming. They want your territory, Minjun. They want everything you've built. Let them try. Minjun held out his hand. The drive, now, your cooperation might buy your family's safety if not your own. For a long moment, Sung-ho didn't move. Then, slowly, he opened the briefcase and pulled out a small external drive. This is it, the only copy, I swear. D-Sung took the drive, immediately connecting it to a scanner. After a few tense seconds, he nodded. It's all here, boss. Complete server copy. Good, Minjun gestured, and two of his men moved to flank Sung-ho. You're coming with us. Where? Somewhere we can have a more detailed conversation about your dealings with the Yakuza. Every meeting, every promise, every piece of information you gave them. Minjun's smile was terrifying. And then we'll discuss appropriate consequences for your actions. They moved through the airport efficiently, Sung-ho between Minjun's men, the rest of them forming a protective circle. To anyone watching, it looked like a business group heading to the parking structure. Only Sung-ho knew he was walking to his execution. As they reached the vehicles, Naomi's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and grabbed Minjun's arm. Wait, we have a problem. What kind of problem? Taekta just posted bail for Choi Tae-won. And there's a report of suspicious activity near the safe house where we relocated the Park family, Di-young's wife and children. Minjun's expression went deadly. They're making moves while we're distracted. How many men do we have at that safe house? 2, standard protection detail. Not enough. He made a decision instantly. D-Sung, take Sung-ho back to the warehouse, start the interrogation, find out everything about their timeline and targets. Naomi, you're with me. We're going to the Park safe house. Boss, that could be a trap, D-Sung warned. They might be trying to draw you out. I don't care. Di-young has been with me for 12 years. His family is under my protection. I'm not letting them become casualties. Minjun was already moving toward his vehicle. And if it is a trap, then the Yakuza will learn what happens when they threaten my people. The drive to the safe house took 40 minutes. 40 minutes of Naomi coordinating with their remaining men, pulling up building schematics, running through tactical scenarios. Minjun drove with one hand, his other holding his phone as he gave rapid-fire orders to his organization. We need to go on the offensive, Naomi said, studying the intelligence they'd gathered. The Yakuza are testing your defenses, seeing how you respond to pressure. If we just react, we'll always be on our heels. What do you suggest? We hit them back, hard, tonight. She pulled up a file on Taekta's known operations in Seoul. He has a shipping facility in Busan. That's where he's bringing in products from Japan. We take it out, we cripple his supply chain and send a message. Minjun glanced at her, something like pride in his eyes. You're thinking like a strategist. I've been thinking like a strategist for 3 years. I'm just acting like one now. She met his gaze. Is that a problem? Not even slightly. He returned his attention to the road. After we secure the Park family, we plan the Busan operation. But Naomi, this is a declaration of war. Once we attack Taekta directly, there's no going back. The Yakuza will retaliate with everything they have. Then we'd better make sure our first strike counts. They arrived at the safe house to find Minjun's men on high alert, but unharmed. The suspicious activity had been a delivery truck that had taken a wrong turn, a false alarm, but one that had revealed how vulnerable their protected families were. We need more safe houses, Naomi said, watching as Di-young's wife clutched her children close. And better distribution. We can't have multiple families in single locations. It makes them easier targets. Agreed. Min-jun was on his phone again, already implementing changes. I want 10 new locations identified by tomorrow, no more than 2 families per location. And I want rotating security teams. No one stays in one place long enough to be compromised. As they worked to reinforce security, Naomi's phone rang. Di-sung's name appeared on the screen. "We've got a problem," he said without preamble. Sung-ho talked. He says there's another mole, someone higher up in the organization, someone who's been feeding the Yakuza information for months. Naomi's blood went cold. Who? He doesn't know the name. They used intermediaries, dead drops, but he says this person has access to everything. Your meeting schedules, security protocols, personal information about key members. Everything. Min-jun took the phone, his expression grim. How high up? Lieutenant level or above. Sung-ho says they're called Ghost in the Yakuza communications. They've been planning this takeover for 6 months, and Ghost has been laying the groundwork. After ending the call, Min-jun stood silent for a long moment, processing. Then he looked at Naomi with an expression she'd never seen before, not quite vulnerable, but close. I need you to do something for me, he said quietly. Something important. Anything. I need you to investigate my inner circle, everyone with lieutenant-level access or higher, including Di-sung. He held up a hand when she started to protest. I know he's been with me for 15 years, I know he's loyal, but we can't make assumptions. Not anymore. Someone I trust is betraying me, and I need to know who before they do more damage. You want me to spy on your most trusted men. I want you to find the truth, because you're the only person I trust completely. His hand cupped her face. The only person who couldn't be Ghost, because you were with me when some of these leaks happened. You're the only one I know is clean. The weight of that trust settled over her like a mantle. I'll find them, she promised. Whoever it is, whatever it takes, I'll find them. I know you will. He kissed her softly, a moment of tenderness in the midst of chaos. When this is over, when we've rooted out the traitors and secured our position, I'm taking you somewhere far away from all of this. Somewhere we can just be Min-jun and Naomi, not the boss and his secretary. I'd like that. Good, because I'm thinking long-term with you. His smile was slight but genuine. Very long-term. The kind of long-term that involves rings and vows and making you legally as much mine as you already are in every other way. Her heart stuttered. Are you proposing to me in a safe house while we're in the middle of a gang war? I'm stating my intentions. There's a difference. But his eyes were serious. I want forever with you, Naomi. I want to wake up next to you every morning and argue with you about strategy over breakfast. I want to build something with you that's ours, not just the organization, but a life, a real life. Ask me again when we're not being hunted by the Yakuza, she said, but she was smiling. When we've found the mole and secured our people, and you're not covered in someone else's blood. Is that a yes or a maybe? It's a, we'll discuss this later when you're being more rational. I'm always rational about you. But he was smiling too, the tension breaking slightly. Come on, we have a war to plan and a traitor to catch. 3 weeks later, Naomi stood in Min-jun's office, looking out over Seoul as the sun set. The Busan operation had been a success, Taekda's facility was ashes, and the Yakuza had pulled back to regroup. More importantly, she'd found Ghost. It had been someone she'd never suspected. Min-jun's accountant, a quiet man who'd worked for the organization for a decade. He'd been embezzling for years, and when the Yakuza discovered it, they'd blackmailed him into providing information. His arrest had been quiet, his disappearance quieter. The organization was secure. The families were safe. And Naomi had proven herself not just as Min-jun's secretary, but as his true partner in every sense of the word. Thinking about something? Min-jun's voice came from behind her. He wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her back against his chest. About how 3 weeks ago, I received flowers from an accountant, and it changed everything. Best flowers that were ever given, he murmured against her neck. Even if they weren't from me. You still haven't given me flowers. Haven't I? He turned her around and she saw the small box in his hand. Not flowers, something better. I told you when I gave you flowers they'd be rare, unique, unforgettable. He opened the box to reveal a ring, a black diamond surrounded by smaller white ones, set in platinum. It was unusual, striking, and absolutely perfect. Black diamonds are the rarest, he explained. Like you, 1 in 10,000, unbreakable, beautiful in ways that conventional beauty can't capture. He pulled the ring from the box. So I'm asking you again, now that we're not in a safe house and I'm not covered in blood, marry me, Naomi, be my partner in everything. Forever. She looked at the ring, at the man offering it, at the life he was promising. It was dangerous, complicated, and absolutely insane. Yes, she said, because some risks were worth taking. Yes, I'll marry you. As he slid the ring onto her finger and kissed her, Seoul glittered below them. A city of secrets and power, where a jealous mafia boss and his brilliant secretary had found something neither had expected. Love, partnership, home. And somewhere in a vase on her desk, fresh orchids bloomed, rare, unique, and unforgettable. Just like them,